Greetings, and welcome to my channel. I'm the Anunnaki Theorist. I'd like to wish everyone a happy Samhain. There are those that pronounce it Samhain. And for those of you that don't know what either one of those are, happy Halloween. Today, I am going to talk about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. Now, you've seen the title of this particular video, and you're probably thinking right now, wow, what a wackadoo. Hell is very near and dear to his heart? Well, yeah, I don't know. I've always been fascinated by hell. Dante Alighieri, when he created the Divine Comedy, and of course, Inferno. I don't know, for some reason, it always spoke to me. Now, I used to be apostolic Pentecostal. I was a holy roller. And so the idea of, being fascinated with hell, it's like a lot of people would say, hey, you're possessed, you have the devil in you. And it's like, no, that's not what it was. While I was in the church, there were some things in the doctrine that just, it didn't make any sense to me. It's like, why would God care about any of this? And it's the reason why I started seeking. I started looking for other possibilities, other reasons why things were the way they were. And when I found out about hell and what hell actually could have been, first of all, I found out that, yeah, it was probably a real place. But it wasn't someplace that you went when you died. It would have made a very good deterrent. So, what is hell? When we look in the various religions and those belief systems that have some form of hell, Hades, Gehenna, Tartarus, Sheol, Sheol, they have some form of hell. It's usually under the ground, literally under the earth. Okay, so for a lot of people, hell is someplace you go when you die. Okay, yeah, you're buried under the earth, but why would it matter if you're in an incorporeal form? You're no longer physical. So, the four attributes that I've found that are most prominent in pretty much all of the descriptions of hell, or their version dependent on the religion or the belief system. One, it's dark. It's a house of shadow. It's a place of outer darkness. You can't see. You hold your hand in front of your face and, well, you just can't see it. There's no light. The second attribute of hell would be that it's hot. Now, some people say it's hot because of fire or brimstone, or anything along those lines. But I see it more as a suffocating heat. You feel confined. You can't breathe. At least not properly. And yes, you might be hot, but it's not necessarily because of fire. Now, if you are in a dark place and you want light, you need a light source. And the potential of fire being used as a light source, I could see that. So the third attribute, and we see this in the Bible, is that there are worms or bugs or invertebrates, some sort. In this particular verse in the King James Version of the Bible, we're talking about worms being your bed and worms being your blanket. Okay, so some sort of an invertebrate, worm, maggot, bug. And we see this in a lot of different religions. When you're under the ground, you've got bugs. Now, the final attribute is that you are as far away from God as you can possibly get. Now, I'm going to add to that. Because not only are you as far away from God as you can possibly get, you're as far away from anybody as you can possibly get. Except for those individuals that are unfortunate enough to be with you. Hey, now I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and plug the Anunnaki theory into this. Okay? The whole idea of hell and what it's for and why it's there. Those that know the saga know that the whole reason why man was created was to remove the yoke of labor off the backs of the gods. And this would be the lower caste of the gods, the Igigi. When first man was created, they didn't look quite Homo sapien. They also had like a grotesque appearance compared to Homo sapien. Kind of brutish, probably somewhat hairy, high forehead, chiseled jaw, not quite human. Now, in anthropological terms, these would be known as Cro-Magnon. And the Cro-Magnon has also been known as cavemen, okay? Supposedly because their remains were found in caves. It seemed that their domicile would be a cave. But not only did they live in caves, they worked in caves. They were the miners of the Anunnaki. So now we have the mines. Well, how can we describe a mine? A mine is dark. You're digging down into the earth. There's no light source except for at the opening where sun gets through. And you would have to take some sort of a light source, fire, down into the mine with you. And as you get further down into the mine, it starts to get warm and suffocating. Now, some people have been in mines and they've been in caves, and they say, well, it's damp and it's cold. But yeah, if you're close to water. But if you're digging down essentially into a mountain, and the further you get down, the closer you get to the mantle or even a hot spot where the magma is starting to come up through the earth, then it starts to get warm. And not only warm, but suffocating. They actually have to dig ventilation shafts into a mine in order to bring fresh air in. But you get enough people down into the mine, and even if you have a ventilation shaft, you're going to start using up a lot of the oxygen, and you're going to start to feel suffocated. Now, if they are digging rock, they're not going to come across a lot of bugs and invertebrates and things like that. But eventually they do hit pockets of dirt. And what are you going to find in the dirt? Worms, bugs, and other invertebrates. And you are as far away from anyone on the surface of the planet, except for those individuals that you are working beside. Do we see a correlation here? And the thing is the mines were known about. So now we come to second man. And second man was created in order to do the mild manual labor, to work in the fields, to tend the sheep and the herds, to make the clothes, to cook the food. And the way that second man was created was different than the way that first man was created. Second man was created through the actual copulation of Enki with two of the Cro-Magnon females, Dawn and Dusk. And so they were not genetically manipulated. They had a whole lot more intelligence, a whole lot more curiosity, and they were willful. They had a rebellious streak. And because of this rebellious streak, they could disobey. Now, this is where we're going to come and we're going to define sin. What is sin? Sin is an offense against religious or moral law, transgression of the law of God. Now, we're not looking at, Christian God here. We're looking at any deity. Okay? So, if any deity, and since we're using the Anunnaki theory here, those deities are the Anunnaki. And I'm going to add to not just the deity, him or herself, but also that deity's intermediaries, the priests. So an offense against religious or moral law, and this moral law can actually be given not just by the deity, but the priests themselves. So if you've got a priest that comes up to one of second man and says, "Hey, paint my house." Now, this is actually an episode of Family Guy, if anybody's ever seen it, when Peter was the supposed faith healer, and they told him, "Hey, we'll do anything," and he's like, "Oh, you don't have to. I'll paint my house." So a priest comes up to you and says, "Hey, paint my house." And second man was like, "The hell I am." He just sinned. So the priest would be like, "The hell you go." He sinned. He disobeyed the law, rule, or order of a deity or the deity's intermediary. And so the priest would send that individual, that second man, to hell to go work in the mines. Now, that's just a mild example. I'm quite sure that they didn't have something along those lines. It would have had to been a really, really severe offense. And it wouldn't have been something like paint my house. I was just giving an example there. And the individuals that went to hell, they went to go work in the mines. It was hard manual labor. I mean, yeah, this might have been a farmhand. This might have been, a field hand. Something, they had calluses, they had muscles and everything because they were used to working at least that mild manual labor. But if you're swinging a pickaxe all day, or whatever their tool might have been, this would have been a lot more manual labor than what they were used to. Now, remember how I told you that the Cro-Magnon were working in the mines? And I pointed out that they're kind of grotesque looking compared to normal Homo sapien. Can we say demons? The denizens of hell? And they would have been taskmasters. Normally they're the ones doing the work. But here comes these sinners, and these Cro-Magnon are told, hey, you need to make them do the work. So they break out the whips, say, all right, you're my bitch now, and make them do the work. And while they were doing this work, because it's something that they weren't used to, second man would have actually felt like this was an eternity. And some of them wouldn't even make it back. The work would be too hard, and they would die. But there would be some that actually made it back, and they would tell the tale. Would they exaggerate? Probably. And I'm quite sure they were encouraged to do so, because this would add to the deterrent. It's like today, or even back when the Bible and the other religious texts were written. How did they know what hell was like? They kept saying, oh, it's darkness and it's fire and all that. How did they know? So those individuals that actually came back from hell, they told the story. They told how bad the conditions were, and they exaggerated. That way, it added to the deterrent. People wouldn't sin because they didn't want to go through that. Okay, so that's physical hell. What about the hell that's talked about when you die? Well, this is my own personal belief. I mean, there are probably variants out there that people believe in, and it's the most definite because this is actually kind of an Egyptian thing. We get into the weighing of the heart. Now, supposedly when you die, your heart, which to the Egyptians was the seat of the soul, your heart is weighed against the feather of Maat, or Mat. Another name for this feather is the feather of truth. Why truth? Why the feather of truth? What does that have to do with when you die? What does it have to do about your righteousness or your unrighteousness? Well, it's because when you die, you no longer have your brain. You are incorporeal. You are a being of energy, and the form of energy that has been used to talk about the soul, especially in Eastern religions, is prana, and I'm for that. But your soul can't lie. The only reason why we have deceit, the only reason why we can lie, is because we have the filter of our brain. The brain is what gives you the ability to lie. So when you are having your soul weighed against the feather of truth, everything that you have done in your life, regardless of how you felt during life. Take a sociopath, someone who is incapable of feeling emotion. And why? Because the brain, there's something wrong with the brain. They have a chemical imbalance, some sort of a genetic anomaly, or actual brain damage. And because of this, they don't feel emotion. They go around killing people, raping people, doing bad things, and they don't feel guilt, shame, regret, or remorse. But now that they are incorporeal and they no longer have that brain filter, They feel those emotions. When we talk to people that have had near-death experiences, a lot of times they tell us, well, I seen my life flash before my eyes. I'm not going to get too much into this idea because I do have another video that I'm going to talk about this particular topic in more detail. But we're just going to say the whole idea of the life flashing before the eyes is important here. Because as your life is flashing before your eyes, and it's not your eyes, of course, you don't have eyes at this point. You are not physical. So we perceive. But as you're perceiving your life, the events of your life, once you come to an event that makes you feel one of those 4 emotions that I just talked about: regret, remorse, shame, guilt, you stop. You don't move on. You don't see any more events. You stop and you relive that event over and over and over again until you can reconcile with that event. And again, I will talk about that reconciliation in a later video. But you don't move on. You don't move on to the next event or the next series of events. You stop. You are your own judge. If you feel shame, remorse, regret, or guilt for anything that you've done, you stop. And you are locked into a perpetual cycle of living that event over and over again. Dante Alighieri, in his Inferno, in several of the punishments, talked about how things played out. Somebody would be torn up, to pieces by harpies, and then they would be put back together, and then they would be torn apart again, and then they'd be put back together. It's that repetitive, eternal loop. And that's what you do. You relive this event that made you feel one of, or all of, or any combination of those emotions. And that's where you stop. And that's hell. That's what hell is. I mean, these religions and these belief systems that tell you that, you're going to burn, or, it's darkness, you're going to have bugs crawling all over you and things like that. You're not physical. These particular things are done to a physical body. And yes, I know, in a lot of the religions, they say, oh, you're given a new body. But those that have studied other things besides this, those that have actually studied like astral projection and out-of-body experiences, more than likely have come across the works of Robert Monroe, who, for the longest time, was the leading authority in the West for out-of-body experiences. And one of the things that he tells us is he tells us that when we are in our light body, when we are incorporeal, we are indestructible. So how would you hurt something that's indestructible? How would you make something incorporeal be in torment? And this is the reason why I say the torment is having to relive those events over and over and over. And that is hell. Now, that's my own personal belief. And it's because of all the things that I have studied, not just the Anunnaki theory, but that's all the religions and all the belief systems that are out there. And I've done the work, I've connected the dots. And for me, the idea of having to relive an event to where you felt the worst over and over again until you reconcile, that's hell. And that's what would happen after you die. Now, as for the hell that is talked about in the Bible and the descriptions and everything, like that doesn't exist anymore. That was a deterrent so that people wouldn't disobey. And that hell was known. But after you die, there wouldn't be any worse hell than having to relive the worst moment of your life. That's hell. I'm the Anunnaki Theorist. Enjoy.